Call this special call meeting to order July 7th, 2015 at approximately 5:31 p.m. Roll call, Madam Clerk.
Councilman Williams? Here. Councilman Burgess?
Here.
Councilwoman Woolman is absent. Councilwoman Faircloth is absent because her mother is seriously ill. Vice Mayor Shelley?
Here.
Mayor Porter?
Here. Tab 1, Mr. Manager.
Mayor, thank you for this special call. The reason we asked for this tonight is because our consultant, Duncan Webb, is on his way to Europe, and today was going to be his last day, and we didn't want to delay the process for the RFQ and RFP process for the theater management. Unfortunately, Duncan was supposed to be here tonight in person, and he has an illness he's dealing with, but he has been willing to do this by phone. So Duncan, I'm assuming you're on?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So Duncan will have a presentation first, and then we have the proposer that will come next, a group called Pinnacle Venue Services. Duncan?
Thank you, George. Mayor, members of council, thank you for allowing me to do this over the phone. I've been struck down for the third time in 15 years by Lyme disease, which is another good reason to live in Florida. There's a deck I hope is up in front of you. Does the clerk have the first slide with the title and the called Web Management Services background up?
Yeah.
Yes, it's there, Duncan.
Okay, so just to remind you, this is my livelihood is consulting to cities and others on the development and operation of theaters. 19th year, 347th project. Next slide, please. So I will go back to the whole story of the Seminole Theater, but just my history with you is I was hired last year to help confirm the case that it made sense to complete the renovation that had begun some years earlier. And my work said, yes, it's a good idea in terms of potential audience demand, user demand. It's a good thing because there are no other facilities quite like this serving the region, and finally because it serves a number of important city goals. So I came back earlier this year to look at the question of governance and operating options, and in March made a recommendation that you find an independent operator to run the Seminole Theater on your behalf. And then you endorsed for us a two-step process that involved issuing an RFQ to find firms that were qualified and able to take this on, and then a second step of a more precise RFP that asked those qualified firms to submit a technical proposal and a financial proposal that would allow the city to select not just a qualified firm, but the one that had the best approach and offer the best financial arrangements to the city. Next slide, please. So let me just review those two steps a little bit more. The request for qualifications was issued on March 27, and the focus was to find operators with the necessary skills and appropriate experience to operate the theater as a community arts venue, meaning we didn't want folks who were going to come in and run the theater, with their own, just for their own dance company or theater company or to do their own thing. We wanted to find an operator who could operate the building as an arts facility for the community, supporting local and regional arts organizations and bringing touring programs to the venue that were potentially in the interests of the community. So on April 15th was the deadline, and we received 5 proposals. Creative Cities Collaborative, which in fact is a group out of Delray Beach that partnered with another company in Miami. Global Spectrum is a national facility management company that operates arenas, convention centers, as well as theaters. Pinnacle Anchor is another partnership that you'll learn more about in a couple of minutes, based in Virginia and also in Florida. Professional Facilities Management is a facility management firm based in Providence, Rhode Island, that operates other facilities in Florida now. And Theater South Atlanta, which their package was a little bit confusing, but I think what they do mostly is produce plays and develop theater. So of those 5 proposals, with the selection committee, we scored them all and determined that we felt that those top 4 firms were qualified to receive the request for proposal. Next slide. So on May 1st, the RFP, which we wrote in, city staff and I and others looked at, we wrote together, went out to the 4 qualified firms, and there the focus was on their technical proposal and financial arrangements. There were 3 proposals received by the deadline of May 15. Creative Cities Collaborative again, Pinnacle Anchor, and Professional Facilities Management. I was speaking to a fellow at Global Spectrum the other day and just sort of asked, do you know why Global Spectrum chose not to submit? And I didn't really get any kind of a good answer. I've had this happen once before where they were on a list of firms being invited to propose and they chose not to propose. So I'm not sure if they just sort of decided that they were too busy or less interested, but in any event, they certainly knew the opportunity existed and we gave them every chance possible. Nevertheless, we received 3 very strong proposals, and interviews were held with all 3 of those finalists in Homestead just on June 23rd. And I was there along with other members of the committee. And we had score sheets and went through that process together and scored Pinnacle Anchor as the highest respondent. Next slide. So in conclusion, I would suggest that this 2-step process was successful because it helped us identify qualified firms and then sort of motivated those qualified firms to submit competitive proposals to operate the Seminole. I think the 5 responses to the RFQ and the 3 responses to the RFP have given the city a strong pool of candidates who are able and willing to operate the theater in the best interest of the city. And I would now recommend that you consider having city staff proceed with negotiations with the top-ranked firm. And if those negotiations are not successful, then proceed to the second-ranked firm. And hopefully then with those, next and final slide, hopefully that those negotiations will be completed soon enough that you can put that operator in place in order to prepare for the reopening of the theater this fall. Thank you. Are there any questions?
Mr. Manager?
Mayor, we thought Pinnacle would have a little opportunity to present, and then if you have questions for either them or Duncan Webb. So with your permission, Pinnacle is here.
Yes, sir. Please come forward.
Great. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Council. Thank you for the opportunity. What I'm going to do is give a brief, hopefully 5 to 7 minute overview of Pinnacle Venue Services and Anchor Arts Management and talk about our proposal for the Seminole Theater, and then certainly open up to questions later. First of all, my introduction, my name is Doug Hagons. I'm the managing partner of Pinnacle Venue Services. I've been in the venue management industry for over 22 years. Spent the past 20 years with the company Duncan just was referring to, Global Spectrum. I left the company in the fall on my own to start Pinnacle Venue Services, specifically for facilities like the Seminole Theater. I felt my time with Global Spectrum, facilities in tertiary markets, smaller theaters, were not being serviced by any company in the industry, and left to start this venture with a partner. As Duncan mentioned, we're based in Virginia. My office is in Virginia, and then I have another office in San Antonio, Texas. Just as I said, we started in November. We're a new company, but all of the principals in the company have been in this industry for well over 20 years. We have experience in all aspects of operating facilities, taking them all the way from what we call pre-opening right through operation and right on to successful operations, which we'll talk about in a second. Just as a quick background, as I said, we started in the fall. We already have 7 clients. Just to highlight one client there to give you an idea of the resources of our company. We just signed a multi-year agreement with the National Basketball Association to provide security services and security audits for them, so it gives you an idea of the depth of our company. As Duncan's mentioned, our partner in this project is a local arts organization in Miami Beach called Anchor Arts Management. Their principal and owner is Gary Lund. Unfortunately, he could not be here tonight. I've known Gary for the past 4 years and recruited Gary while I was with Global Spectrum to operate the Colony Theater and the Byron Carlisle Theater in Miami Beach, which was underneath my direction. So Gary and I have a great deal of experience in working for each other. When the RFQ first came out, my first call was to Gary, say, hey, what do you think we could do? And we started talking and got really excited about it. So how it would work is our company will be the contracting entity managing the facility on your behalf. Gary's company will assist us in the arts and community programming. We can talk about that more in a second. Just 4 points of why we felt we were the best firm for the Seminole Theater. One, as I said, we're a new company. This will be our first full management contract as a company. So you're going to be a priority. Certainly, as we help the theater succeed, it's going to help our company succeed. Our philosophy is certainly that you ultimately will be our best salespeople for future projects. Our experience, which I'll talk about in a second, our belief in community partnerships. We understand that the Seminole Theater is a true community theater, and we're going to make sure that happens. And then, most importantly, our business plan. So I've talked about being a new company. We're certainly, none of us are new in the industry. We're veterans in the industry, and we have a great deal of experience in bringing theaters almost identical to the Seminole Theater from pre-opening to the vision that you have for it. So I said the Seminole Theater will be our flagship theater because it'll be one of our first accounts, and certainly you will get the extreme dedication and attention of the ownership of the company. And then third, we think we understand what your vision is for the theater, and we'll be sure to be your stewards to make that happen. Our experience, I've hit on that a couple times now. The other point from an experience standpoint is certainly Gary Lund from Anchor Arts Management has been in South Florida for over 25 years. I've worked in the Florida marketplace for close to 20 years and have overseen facilities in Coral Gables, Miami Beach, Miami, and then going further north. So certainly understand the marketplace, understand Homestead, and the market here is a little bit different than the rest that I've talked about, but certainly understand the area that we're working within. Community partnerships. This is where I think that we really set ourselves apart from the competition. If we are fortunate enough to get to the point where we come back to you and get approval for a contract, one of the first things that we'll do is sit down and meet with all the stakeholders or potential stakeholders for the theater. Make sure we listen, and that's the key word, listen to what you all have envisioned for the theater and what you want to get out of it. So we'll be sure that we understand what your goals are. We'll involve the community as we start to build our business program, and we'll sit and talk to them each step of the way. Certainly, as we did research on the project, Miami-Dade College has a presence down here, and we think they have a need to use space in the theater as well as we saw that in the study and from conversations. They'll be one of the first people that we'll sit down with and really talk about cultivating a business and educational relationships so that we help each other. We're excited about the fact that there's already a friends group that's being established for the theater. I've got a great deal of experience with working with similar groups across the country, and we'll really sit down early on with the friends group and embrace them and figure out how we can help each other. And the other part from the community standpoint is I came here in April and did a tour of the Seminole while I was just first under construction. And my eyes, while walking around the theater, kept zeroing in on that green space, Losner Park, right adjacent to the theater. I've been very successful in similar projects in getting green space like Losner Park and theaters to work together so that they really work in tandem to help drive additional activity to downtown Homestead, which is really what your ultimate goal is. Business plan, which is certainly it comes down to, we've got the experience, we understand your vision, but can we put the plan in place and we have the experience to do so? From a financial standpoint, as I talked about the Friends Group, we will partner with the Friends Group and go out and start helping fundraise for the theater and for the long-term success of the theater. We aim to book events and work with events that appeal to all segments of the population. The term I like to use is something for everyone. And so that will be our goal on your behalf for the Seminole Theater, is to have a place that's something for everyone. And then we are a business, we're a company. We will operate the theater on your behalf, focusing on the bottom line results. Education outreach is certainly important. We've got a huge education plan along with Gary and Anchor Arts Management to make sure that the theater is active in exposing the community to the arts, starting from school-age children right on through seniors. We have a number of programs that we'd like to put in place down here to do just that. Certainly, not to be remiss, when somebody comes to a theater or a venue, food and beverage, that's as part of the program, directly reflects on the opinion of the theater. We've got a plan for high-quality food and beverage services. And as I said, I talked about the relationship with Miami-Dade College and then how we'll work with a friends group. That's my best effort of taking a 30-minute presentation and putting it in 5. Would love to have questions.
Any questions from council? Mr. Burgess?
Thank you, sir, and thank you for your time coming down here tonight.
Thank you.
The one thing you said is that this is going to be your first full-time management job for Pinnacle. Can you explain to me what it is that you're doing now for the other companies that you're doing and how that differs from what just so I understand what you guys are doing now versus what you're going to be doing exactly here? What's the difference between the two?
Sure. So I said we started in the fall, and we immediately went after a number of consulting contracts. And consulting is, when you go after a consulting contract, the term's a lot shorter, a lot more finite. For example, for the city of Norfolk, Virginia, we are their advisor, maybe in a similar role to as Duncan fulfills for you, but we're the advisor for their long-term growth and their plan for their arena and their theater. We've got city of Pharr, Texas, where we're helping them to craft a feasibility study for the long-term use of some land that they have there. So I mentioned the National Basketball Association, we provide security services there. So it's really, our focus early on was consulting work because the sales cycle for management clients is a lot longer, and obviously the contract's a lot longer. So now we're just starting to see the fruition of some of those RFP processes that we've been going through.
Okay. And then so I'm clear, you or somebody from the corporate office, perhaps yourself or whoever, would oversee, and AAM would be the ones that would be in the city mostly and doing...
No, sir. Myself, I'll be the person that you'll see more often than not representing our companies in the city. I'll be the person, I'll be the boots on the ground, and then what we'll do is we'll hire our staff on your behalf. We'll hire an executive director and hire full-time staff underneath that executive director who will operate the theater on a day-to-day basis, but it'll be with direction from you and through me to make that happen. So if all goes well, I'll get to know all of you and see you quite often.
Okay. I'll wait for now. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Mr. Williams?
Yes, thank you. Let me go back to you say your business plan motto. You ran across fundraising, which is a big part of the Seminole Theater, I think, success is fundraising.
Yes, sir.
Of course, every year it was projected, at least the first couple of years, of a loss. It will be a gap in even just trying to break even. So what ideas, if you can talk to me about what are some of the ideas of your fundraising that you all have been successful in your previous contracts?
Again, I could give you a probably 30-minute answer. I'll try to do it in 2 minutes. First of all, starting from the grand opening, we need to be sure that we sit down with a friends group early on, listen to them and understand what their goals are, but really be sure that from a fundraising standpoint, that we're very active with all of the grand opening events in letting people know why they should be giving to the theater and how they can give to the theater. For example, seat campaigns. A number of theaters, as they open, will give the people to come in to put their name on seats in the building, and that would be a gift to the building. You can do things with pavers and things like that, which I've seen out front. Certainly, we believe that working with a friends group and establishing some specific events that would require or would benefit from specific sponsorship, we'd go out in the community and let people know about those efforts. Educational programs that I talked about, give individuals in the community, tell them about the education programs that we're offering, and give them the ability to put their name on it and be a part of it and help grow that program over time. So really the big thing from fundraising is letting the community know what the benefit is that the programs that are offering at the theater has to the overall community.
Follow up, Mayor?
Yes, sir, go ahead.
I don't know if I'm really convinced. I'm trying to delineate between what web consulting and what you're doing, because I was under the impression that they were finding operators to operate the theater, but in your presentation, you're going to go out and fire somebody to really handle the day-to-day and be the executive director, and then hire staff on that. So help me understand what you all are doing differently, because I think you all are two in the same.
No.
If you're going to go out and hire an executive director, and I thought web consulting was actually finding an operator to do that, and you're saying to us today that you're going to find an executive director and then hire staff to operate it. So what is your capacity?
Sorry, let me be clear. The staff that we go out and hire will be Pinnacle Venue Services staff. So there are staff, and we've got people in mind for those, and we'll be sure that we come in, and as I talked about myself being here, we will support the local staff on the ground to put the proper systems and procedures in place to be sure that you're as successful as possible. To take best practices that I and myself and my partners have from operating similar theaters across the country and put those in place for this theater here. So the staff here that's hands-on, that's day-to-day for the Seminole Theater will be Pinnacle Venue Services team. They'll be trained by us, supported by us, and so I won't be here 365 days a year, but I'll be part of the Seminole Theater 365 days a year as well as the rest of my team. Does that make any more sense?
Yeah, I know, but I'm gonna move on. My last question is, since this is gonna be Pinnacle's anticipated first contract as a company, your model in which you're using now, if you had to point me in a direction that says I can look at that model and you all will be using that model to put here at the Seminole Theater, where can I look? Which organization that you're within that can point me to a good model that I can go back and say they did a good job?
Are you asking for a similar theater? Is that what?
Yeah, based on within your portfolio that you've helped manage, or
Yeah, certainly the Colony Theater in Miami Beach, which was underneath my direction, as I mentioned, when I was with my former employer, Global Spectrum, I oversaw all of their theaters, so I could go through all of them.
they're not with your company now, right?
Correct, no.
That's previous. So what model do you have now that's within your portfolio that you can point me to?
Well, if I'm understanding your question, when we responded to the RFP, and part of what I talked about is our specific business plan for the Seminole Theater, will be created amongst further discussion within the community. As far as the model of what we have, I mean, I've got it, if we go back to my previous employer and
So
like,
let me rephrase the question. Do you have any other companies or any other projects that you're doing with operational project management, consulting or whatever, in theaters at this current time, or would this be it?
no,
Do you have any within your portfolio of other companies that are listed that you work
no,
with?
no, and that is the point. Under the Pinnacle Services name, this will be one of our first full management theater clients. Now, we are close on some others, but going through similar process, but this will be our first. That's under our name. Again, if you look at my overall experience and the experience of our other partners, we've got a great deal of experience in very similar models of successfully operating theaters similar to this.
Okay, I'll let it go. 'Cause I'm sorry you just still didn't answer my question, but that's fine, I'll move on.
Yes, sir. Vice Mayor?
Thank you, Mayor. Question for Mr. Webb. You still there on the phone, Mr. Webb?
Yes?
Have you had a chance to evaluate the three RFPs as far as the companies themselves, and as far as what is your opinion on their capabilities? Specifically, I guess, with Pinnacle being that's the one that's being recommended to go, go with, but also generally speaking, are all three of them capable, you think, of coming in and managing the Seminole Theater?
I think all three are capable. All three have relevant experience at the corporate and/or sort of staff level. All three have experience in Florida, in South Florida. So I was pleased at the set of proposals. The Pinnacle proposal was the highest score proposal from all the members of the committee, because we felt that even though as this corporate entity, that they're not operating another theater right now, that there is within the organization lots of relevant experience operating buildings like this in this region. Secondly, we liked their approach, and we liked that they paid attention to things like working with Miami-Dade College, paying attention to the very strong and helpful volunteer organization that's been advocating and supporting the project for many years, and that they recognize the opportunity of Losner Park next door, and that they also bring sort of a nonprofit partner that is well connected with the regional arts community. So for all of those reasons, we felt that this was a good candidate with whom to take sort of the first crack at negotiating a contract, knowing that if it doesn't work out, you have another good candidate ranked second.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, because I have no experience with theaters, and it's outside of my field of expertise. And so you being the expert in the theater field, that's why I wanted to hear your opinion on all three of them, but specifically Pinnacle, the one that's being recommended to us as the first negotiated contract, potential first negotiated contract, to make sure that they are capable. Because one of the things I did see was, because you guys were just recently formed in December, you know, I did have some concerns that you didn't have a track record as a company, although individually you guys all have been involved in other major operations, it seems like, based on the documentation that I have, and all of you run capable theaters at that in that capacity. So that was one of my concerns. I just wanted to ask you, Mr. Webb, if you thought that they were capable, that based on their experience, and it seems like your answer, you said that yes, you believe that they are capable in doing this based on the qualifications.
I do.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Manager, and tonight, basically what you're asking from us is the ability to go forward to try to negotiate. We're not making a deal tonight, right?
Correct.
Okay.
And one thing you should all be aware of is, from Duncan's original analysis of the theater, these types of theaters don't break even. They require fundraising, subsidies, they require grants, and so part of the negotiation process is also going to understand what kind of levels of service we can tier into this so that, at the high end, we know what the potential for shortfall will be if we reduce the level of service. So instead of having enough shows and presentations where we'd have 30,000 people a year going through the facility, what would it be if we had 15,000 attendance over the year? And so we're going to have those kind of discussions and also try to gauge what type of activity and how serious they are about working with the Friends groups and local community leaders to raise money, because obviously, the funny thing is, educating the voters about this project seemed hard. Getting the theater renovated and open seems hard. But the hardest thing for any of these theaters is to keep them running every year. And so, Rick and I look at each other, and we're, 11 years later, our White Plains Theater is still open, but every year was hard. It was always hard, and it will always be hard. And the way the doors stay open is if the community is committed to this amenity. Because if people don't go, then it's going to be hard to keep the doors open. If people don't see the value in it as a downtown quality of life amenity, then it's going to be hard to raise the money. And so our first step in this process is to work with them and try to get a sense of the minimums and maximums in terms of subsidies and what's the best way to have apportion that subsidy between whatever assistance, if any, the city is willing to contribute, and also from outside sources.
Okay, thank you. I'll open up the public hearing at this time. If anyone would like to speak for or against this, you're welcome to come forward and name and address at the podium.
My name is Jerry Penicky, and I live at 480 Southeast 23rd Lane here in Homestead. And the question that I have for the city and for the city manager is, with the RFP, was there performance metrics involved with the RFP? In other words, how is the city going to know how good is? And I'm quite sure that you're very capable at what you do. But we can go downhill real quick if we don't have something to measure by. So that's my question. Is there performance metrics involved with this?
It's a very good question. Duncan was the drafter of our RFP. Duncan, why don't you take a crack at that first, and I have some thoughts as well.
Yeah, excellent question. So the metrics, and I spend a lot of time working with cities on this question, because the easy part of the answer is that it starts with the budget. So every year the proposed operator will bring a budget forward to city staff and then ultimately to city council, where financial targets will be set that relate both to earned revenue and contributed income and also to expenses. And their compensation, a portion of their compensation, will hopefully be based on the achievement of those financial targets. The other part of that, the harder part of this is setting other measures that are less financially or even sort of quantifiably oriented. So we want to try within the contracting process to establish measures that relate to community engagement, broad sort of community support for the Seminole Theater, impact on the continued revitalization of downtown Homestead, impact on the sort of regional sort of branding and identity of Homestead within South Florida. So we are aware of the challenge of trying to measure things like that. They're a little bit tougher to measure, but we're going to take a crack at it within the contracting process.
And Mayor, the other interesting point is, when you first think, okay, the budget equals our objective metric, yes and no. To a certain extent, you can set the goal and say, okay, this thing needs to be at a $300,000 subsidy in one form or another. But maybe that's ultimately too much for everybody to bear at some point, and we decide to ratchet down service. So even though they're headed in that direction, it may not be what people want. It could be the productions are not satisfying to people. It could be that they're not getting the attention. There's so many different things here involved, and truthfully, at some point it becomes, you know it when you see it, even though, yes, we want to set them, and that's part of the negotiation here is, I want to know going in what we're up for in terms of, you know, subsidy and fundraising needs. But at the end of the day, the first year particularly, it's like any business. You're opening it up, and there's going to be certain dynamics that you're not going to know until you start seeing them. And then we as an organization, I think you as policymakers are going to need to be a little dynamic in responding to the ebbs and flows of this operation, because it's unlike anything else that we do here.
Anything else, Mr. Pinicky?
Yeah, just one thing, if I may make a suggestion.
Sure.
There's two different things. You know, obviously you want to make money to doing this because you want it to be self-sufficient. But in order to get the grants and to get people excited about it, you have to get people out into the theater. So the metrics that I would suggest is for the productions that you bring in, that you think about what success looks like. You know, are you going to fill it 80%? Are you going to fill it 90%? What is that? And you know, whoever manages this needs to have something, you know, some goals in mind. Because, you know, forgive me, but I had a daughter that was in musical theater for years and years, and so I was involved with this. It's one thing, you know, if you can get the people out there, then you're going to start making the money. But you got to get the people out there, and the metrics need to revolve around, you know, how good we are at doing that with everything we do with our theater. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mr. Williams?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. In looking at Pinnacle's record here, I don't really see the real, and I know they're just beginning as far as a new company, but even some of the clients that they have, I don't see anything within their portfolio that really gives them the, I think, the overall strength and confidence in trying to make the Seminole Theater a success. I see in their references that they have consulting of one-time fees, but I don't see any management type of structures as relates to theater per se, other than their individual things that they've had with other companies. So if perhaps they could, and I'm still on the same question really, is there's nothing in your portfolio of management at this current time, even though you started this company last year, and there's nothing in your portfolio that can take me to a theater at all, is there?
No, correct. And I don't think we're hiding from the fact that.
No, I'm not saying you were hiding.
We do not have a management.
Let me correct you, because
Okay.
I didn't say you all were hiding. I said that you all in experience of, as a company now, have any theaters whatsoever in your portfolio? I didn't say you were hiding anything.
No, we're consulting for a theater in Norfolk, Virginia, the Chrysler Hall. But no, we do not have a management client similar to Seminole Theater at this time, which cuts both ways. Certainly, you could look at the company and say it's a new company. We do not have any similar facilities in our portfolio. And so what does that mean? Well, what it means is that because you'll be one of our first, you're going to get above and beyond attention, because certainly every promise, every discussion that we have with each of you is going to be, we're going to be sure, and I'm personally going to be sure, because my company's growth relies on being sure that we deliver above and beyond and make the Seminole Theater as successful as possible.
So,
No, but I do want to just be clear, as individuals, and I think Duncan backed this up, is we've got a great deal of experience with former companies successfully managing very similar theaters. And, the two I'll point to right up the road, the Colony Theater and the James L. Knight Center.
okay, thank you.
Mr. Burgess, then Ms. Fagan. Ms. Fagan, go ahead.
Linda Fagan, president of Seminole Theater, 17305 Southwest 300th Street. It's nice to meet you. I just want to ask you if you'll just explain the AAM folks again. I don't think I really got what they mean, the involvement with you, if you don't mind. Thank you.
The question was about Anchor Arts Management, who will be our programming partner. Gary Lund is the president and co-founder of Anchor Arts Management. They're a nonprofit arts programming company. So what their role will be as it relates to the Seminole Theater is they'll help us in programming decisions. So Gary's been in South Florida for over 25 years, knows all of the individual arts organizations, has already talked to them about the theater, and talked about how we can use the Seminole Theater to cultivate the arts in the Homestead community. That's what Gary's going to be. He's going to be the conduit from the theater and the Friends Group directly to the arts organizations, because he lives it, he talks to them each day, and that's his passion. His passion will be to be sure that the arts comes alive in the theater, and we'll look to use his expertise and his direction to help us all make that happen. That make sense?
Mr. Burgess? Do me a favor, turn that microphone down. It's got a lot of reverberation or something. It's kind of awkward. Thank you.
Two things have stuck out. One, yourself and Mr. Webb both talked about how Pinnacle has ideas for the park, and Mr. Webb said that you had, and correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Webb, but he had
Wrong way.
But that he had expressed some ideas to you, I believe, or some thoughts, and I was just wondering if you could maybe expand on what possibilities you think you could bring, your corporation could bring over there, or some ideas that you might see for us in the future.
Yeah. Our view is that Losner Park and the Seminole Theater,
Now you got to turn it up. You got to turn it up a little bit.
Our view is that Losner Park and the Seminole Theater are really ultimately one activity, oriented space. So the communication would occur on a very regular basis from us in the theater and the Parks and Recs Department about programming and creating events that start outside in the park, come into the theater, and then go outside of the park. So it's festivals, which would be use the park and the theater and the classrooms, and start as multi-day events and grow from there. It's certainly when there's an event, every time there's an event in the theater, to the extent that we can have programming outside in the park that is in conjunction with programming inside the theater, we certainly would want to do that. We see individually just the ability to create a weekly series of events at the park that really helps one, get people back to downtown Homestead. Two, helps the theater, helps us get exposure for the theater. The people who may not be interested in the arts or other events there, but gives them a reason to come downtown and gives us a reason on your behalf to show the theater off. So really, the two working together become integral. Not to get too much into the weeds of our financial proposal, we felt so strongly about it, is that we hopefully enter into financial discussions with the city, is that we're prepared to put money to help do just that and be sure that there's equipment and production necessary to host events in the theater. That's how strongly we feel about the two working together, really, on the long-term growth for not just the park and the theater, but for downtown Homestead, which is, we heard, is really ultimately what you're all looking for. So our goal is to get as many people downtown as possible and use the two spaces together.
And I see on your resume, there's 9 other theaters, I believe, that counted that you helped, that you directly helped with. Is that correct, or is that the total for the?
No, that's I oversaw all of the theaters in the Global Spectrum portfolio. So I was involved with all of them from startup all the way through operation. So this is, while again, it's a company, we may not have, we've only been around since November, so we can only have so much experience. This is what I do every day. This is what I went to college for. This is what I do for a living.
Okay. And then just one last question that came up. To make it a success and with these other theaters, how many nights a year would we have to average to make it a success for you and for the city, do you think?
Well, there's two things. As the city manager referenced, you're opening a business. Let's be very direct about that. Any new business is going to take some time to grow. And so the question is, how active can it be? You know, we put together a pro forma. We said in the first year, 32,000 people go through the doors. You know, we've grown that in our 5-year business plan to over 42,000 people. As far as number of nights, if you're just talking about the main hall, remember, you know, the theater you're building has a number of classroom space, rehearsal space. So really, we've got a program in the first year that's got 800 something events, if that's what you define. That could be from anywhere from 5 people to 400 people. The main hall in the first year, we've got active for like 125 event days, and then growing that to 175 in year 5. So there's a growth model here, and certainly we look forward to the opportunity of helping you grow it.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Manager.
You know, one thing it's very important to understand, particularly in the first couple of years with these types of theaters, it's the same problem that Broadway faces and Hollywood faces, which is there's a bunch of smart people and artistic people that really think they know what the public wants, and they're really sure about it, and they invest a lot of money in it, and sometimes they nail it, and sometimes they underestimate it, and they have huge success, and sometimes it just falls flat. And so with the smaller theaters, it's going to be the same thing. There's going to be successes and there's going to be failures, and they're going to have to learn and feel their way through this, even though they have experience. You know, so does Paramount Pictures, and very often they have failures. And it's just at the end of the year, you know, the collection of product that they put out, they hope they're way more ahead than behind. But they're going to run a show one day and you're going to walk in there and there's nobody there. And then they're going to run a show that they should have run 3 nights instead of 1 night. And it's just going to be a work in progress. Our job is going to try to make sure that this thing doesn't bleed money, recognizing that, you know, it's going to take a lot of monitoring and collaboration, and ultimately ensuring that the amenities that they're providing is what you and the community wants. And that's, again, a learning process.
How long do you think the negotiations will take before it's back? And
Duncan, you thinking we can have this on the August agenda?
Yes.
So 30 days plus or minus?
Plus or minus.
Okay.
Unless things don't work out.
Right, understand. This is a public hearing. Ma'am, would you like to say something? Please come forward.
Hello, I'm Carolyn Jones. My address is 27410 Southwest 167 Avenue. I am new to the community, and I love Homestead. My question would be, and we are theater people, I am a theater person here working and enjoying being in Homestead and bringing culture to the community. My question would be, though he talked about theaters that were in other areas, Homestead is a different animal. It's a small community. There's a lot of people that are not theater goers. It's a diverse community. I want to know, what is his plan of action, or what do they see for diversity in the theater? How are they going to bring people who are not theater goers to the forefront? How are they going to look at theater people and entertainment companies local? How will we be able to use the theater? Are we going to be part of the plan of action or the plan of some of the things that are going to be coming to the theater? Because, you know, that's my desire. I want to be a part of the theater. I want to see diversity. I want to see things that I think that the community will want to see. And will we be a part? Is it all, because these people are not from Homestead, they are from Rhode Island and New York. So what about Homestead people? How will we be involved?
Yes, sir.
Ma'am, you're singing from my hymnal. That's exactly what we're here for. Is if we're successful in getting a contract with the city, one of the first things that we'll do is sit down with all segments of the community. And you hit on a very, very important point. The arts community, known users of the theater, that's the easy part. It's how we're going to embrace people that would not even think about attending the theater and getting out into those communities. So we do it a couple ways. One is coming back to the conversation about Losner Park. I think that's the perfect example, as I mentioned, by having activities in Losner Park that may appeal to broader masses, the broader community, bringing them to downtown Homestead and exposing them to theater and seeing all that can and will be happening there. Then getting out into the different parts of the civic community, getting out to different association meetings, really getting active in the community. So I said, I may not live in Homestead, but I'm very familiar with South Florida, as is Gary Lund, who lives in Miami Beach, and then the staff that we hire will be part of your community, will live in your community. In our mission for them and our directive to our employees will be that they are to be part of the fabric of Homestead and be a part of the community and know the community. A number of people that we'll end up employing in the theater currently live in Homestead right now. A number of people that we will end up employing in the theater currently live in Homestead right now. I do not know who they are. I can just make that promise to you right now. There will be a number of people working in that theater that are Homestead residents. So trust me, it's a community theater. It doesn't matter what's happened up the road in Miami Beach or New York or anyone else. This is Homestead's theater. We understand that through and through. I think that's why we are the preferred vendor, because we are very clear that we understand that message and we're going to work hard to make sure that we deliver on that promise.
But Mr. Manager, let me ask a question. Assigning the operational aspect of this to a vendor does not preclude the city's input on a day-to-day basis of participating in the discussion about what's good or what's bad.
Oh.
You're not giving away the keys to the theater.
Absolutely not. In fact, it's the contrary. They're here to basically run a building that you want. They're there to create a venue that you want. And so as we also talk about subsidies and what this theater will look like financially, theaters like this have the two kinds. Ones that are people who want to use the theater, that are nonprofits, that don't generate a whole lot of money. You could be a children's group that wants to do a puppet theater and they're there and paying $3 a person. Or it can be a produced package show that they buy and they bring in and the ticket price is a little higher. And so you're all going to have that discussion about what this place wants to be and what kind of balance you want to strike between revenue generators and community service.
But just so that everyone knows, I mean, we're not giving this up to an operator and having no more say-so in the day-to-day role of they're operating on our behalf, our community's behalf. So there'll definitely be opportunities for us to approach them, whether it's through the council, whether it's through some of the friends that are in the room today. So it's still our theater.
And Mayor, it's also a very good sign that people come up and talk about, what about us? Well, the what about us really is part of what we're anticipating is people who want to use the theater so that the doors are open all the time.
Exactly.
And so not only have we thought about this, but we welcome it, and we're expecting and hoping for that kind of participation.
Yes, ma'am.
And that was my other concern, and then I'm going to sit down. Is it going to be a touring house? What are the ticket costs going to be? Because there are only 400 seats, so it would be hard to have a touring house because the tickets would have to be very expensive. And how will we, the community people who are theater people, be a part of it? What is the plan of action for us?
Well, Mr. Manager, one of the questions that we had was, do we try to operate it ourselves as a city, try to run this theater? And the answer was from the council, no, we didn't really want to do that at this point. So the second part of it is, then we go out and we find out who would be the opportunity, where would be the opportunity to have someone come in and see what they could do with it, and give us some guidance as to that. So I think we're right there.
Right, and this community center is a good example of, this is a government facility, and the government runs it, day-to-day operations. And this is really here as an amenity with no expectation of significant revenue generation to be self-sufficient. And so this room, for example, people can come, call, and they can book the room, and they can have their wedding. They pay us a small fee, and that's it every day. Their job is to take a similar type facility and make sure it's available to the public as per your direction, but also to make sure that there's enough interesting things going on in the city so that it becomes as self-sufficient as possible, where they're able to have enough interest to raise funds, and they're able to justify a small subsidy from the city. And so it's really the balance between the two. And Broward Center, for example, or Arts Center, they have a lot of shows in there that, because they have the seats, they can generate revenue. And so they need to have those in there to keep the lights on, but they also try to engage the community, have things that are not necessarily the money makers, so it's that balance. We'll have more of the one than the other, because with 400 some odd seats, it's very difficult to get the large shows in. But that's where their expertise is vital, in that they're going to know what kind of shows are out there that they can buy, that they can bring somebody in and bring in a little bit of revenue and also entertain the public or inspire the public at the same time. So it really is a balance, but the balance is your decision, not theirs.
Right. Okay. This is still a public hearing. I'm going to close the public hearing. Oh, sorry. Yes, sir. Got to jump up.
Hi, my name is Anthony C. Prasad. I live at 901A Adams Terrace in Homestead. I had another question about Anchor Arts Management, because I still am not quite clear how they're affiliated with you. It sounds like you're the parent company, and then you're mentioning one person that's part of the Anchor Arts Management. So is Anchor Arts Management, I have a couple questions, so maybe I'll ask both of them and then you can answer them. So is that just one person that kind of has a company name that you're hiring to figure out how he's going to put his finger on the pulse of what's going to work in Homestead, or is that a team of people that you're hiring as a consulting firm to figure that out? And what is Anchor Arts Management's role in the staffing for the theater? So that's my first question, is really how they're involved, because it just sounds like, we're kind of hiring a consulting firm who's hiring another consulting firm which sounds like a lot of consulting fees, which goes to my second question, which is about the fundraising aspect of it. And I think we all understand that you have to ask the community to invest in it. But further than that, do you have any other ideas and experience in how you're going to fund the theater besides just asking people to donate? Like what your experience in grant writing is, what you how you are going to do it besides just asking people in the community?
Better. A bunch of different questions there. First, Anchor Arts Management, I'm referencing one individual. That's the person that I deal with on a daily basis, Gary Lund, who's the president and co-founder of Anchor Arts Management. It is a company, but it is really the one individual who'll be doing the bulk of the work for Anchor Arts Management. Let me make it clear, to be clear, as far as what their role is. Specifically, the company that would be hopefully entering into a contract with the city is Pinnacle Venue Services. We will negotiate, hopefully, to successful conclusion, a fee to be paid, as part of, to do this service for the city. Anchor Arts Management is underneath us, so there's no separate fee to them. Whatever fee we end up, our fees that we end up successfully negotiating with the city, whatever the financial relationship between Pinnacle Venue Services and Anchor Arts Management, all we're saying is they come along. The expertise that they have in arts programming comes along. And so just look at it as the word you use is they're going to consult with all of us, all of you, as we start to make decisions for programming on your behalf. And Gary will represent the entities that he knows in the arts community to be sure that they're represented at the table. We felt as though it was a strong asset of ours to have the arts community represented at the table when programming decisions were being made. So does that answer that part of the question? Yeah, he had a family commitment tonight that he could not get out of. I'll try to apologize for. But it be very clear that Pinnacle Venue Services is a contracting entity. He is just part of our team to do so.
We'll try to have him, assuming the negotiations go well, we'll try to have him at the next meeting. I did have one comment to make, and I think this is an important thing so that when we look back at this meeting one day, because we don't know what company we hire will be successful or will fail. We don't know that. We also, when we look at a new company, we look at the principals involved. And even if they're accomplished people, individually, we don't know yet whether as a group they will be successful. The big question was raised over 20 years ago with DreamWorks when Steven Spielberg and Jeffrey Katzenberg and David Geffen, titans in their own areas, the music industry, the film industry, they were very accomplished people. Nobody knew when they got together to form their own company, DreamWorks, whether that was going to work or not. And so sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't work. Sometimes you can hire an established company that has a huge portfolio of theaters, and Homestead maybe doesn't get the same attention because they're not looking to prove something like this group. So this is really not a science at this point. This is just, you got to use your best judgment in terms of, are they capable to run this theater? And in terms of guaranteeing success, that's just going to come over time because we don't really know.
Mr. Williams?
Going to the proposal and trying to move it forward, I have a issue with the 5-year contract piece. What happens in 3 years we get down the road and we find out that it's not working, or 2 years down the road we find out it's not working? We can't opt out of this contract until after the 3rd year?
Yeah, that's going to be the focus of the negotiations. Duncan, that's something that we're going to have flexibility with, correct?
Because we're looking at 5 years.
Duncan?
It's the terms that we put into the contract and the opportunities that the city has to end the contract based on non-performance of the operator.
So non-performance would end the contract.
Well, how is that determined based on what, because it's not a science.
Well, I don't think we've gotten to the details yet.
Right,
That's
but
part
I'm
of the-
saying that's if we're saying these statements and, you know, we can't get out of, the only way we can get out of is at, you know, for non-performance, what does that mean?
Well, again, that's something that all these details we haven't really talked a whole lot about, and the plan was to negotiate with them, make sure that we're comfortable on the administration side, and then kind of go through the contract with you all and make sure that you're comfortable as well.
No. My other follow-up question is that as it relates to as it relates to performance, in their proposal, they're the one that suggested this term, right? And then if they suggested this term, what is their idea of a 5-year contract?
Typically, a 5-year contract would begin when the facility opens. And so that's when the clock would start ticking. You know, as the city manager mentioned, the non-performance issues that will be addressed, it will be addressed as part of the contract negotiation. Certainly, we're willing, to be sure that we're doing the best for you, is we understand your desire to have non-performance clauses in the contract, and we're not going to push back on that. We understand it. Two, particularly because we are a new company, we're going to put our money where our mouth is. So certainly, we're going to be sure that we're up front and held accountable for everything that we said we're going to be held accountable for, and we'll have no resistance from us during the contract negotiation process.
Okay, but based in your proposal that you have a pre-bid opening management fee of $2,000 a month starting in August and September.
Correct.
But you said the clock don't start running until you open it.
Traditionally, and we can put this into the contract negotiation discussion, typically the term would start when the facility opens, and that's when the clock would start ticking on that term.
So when is the estimated time for the Seminole Theater to open?
Estimated time is the end of October. But again, on all these specific issues, we have not had an opportunity to talk, even to draw any conclusions from a staff perspective, nor have any feedback from you all. So we have a lot of thinking to do, and that's really why we asked for your authorization to negotiate a contract.
All right, thank you.
Mr. Burgess?
Thank you, Mayor. I guess George and his staff are looking for direction, and so I will give my 2 cents worth and say that the man's managed 9 theaters. He's got a vision that in his mind already, a little bit with Losner Park included. He says they're hungry to make this a success. So I would go ahead and say that my direction would be to go ahead and let George and staff, the attorneys or whoever, to start the process.
Is that a motion?
I'll make that motion.
Is there a second? Moved and seconded. Any final public comments?
I just have one more question, and that is, I'm interested in the artistic directorship. Is there going to be an artistic director? Sometimes what you said about Steven Spielberg made me think, but Steven Spielberg is an artist. So there's a difference between management and artistic. Is there going to be an artistic director? You know, the success that Steven Spielberg has is because he is an artist. You know, that's different from the management part. So is your AAM people the artistic people? You know, will there be an artistic director? Will art people be brought in? Or is it just the management people? Because I'm interested in in quality things being brought that are artistically great, you know? And so I'm hearing all of this management stuff, but what about the artistic side?
Yeah, to answer that question is that is the role of Anchor Arts Management, is to represent the arts community in programming decisions as we sit down with the city and the Friends. The key is that, as we talked about earlier, we're working on your behalf. We're working on the community's behalf. And we will be sure that as programming decisions start to get made and we start to have budget discussions with the city, which is the larger issue of that, we start to bring those discussions to bear. So what would it cost to have a full-time artistic director or a part-time artistic director? What would the value be? And start to enter into some of those discussions. But our vision has Anchor Arts Management as part of our team to be sure that the arts community is represented in the discussion initially, and then just step out and really speak with the entire arts community to be sure that they're represented at the table in all of these discussions.
Mayor, if I can say also on the issue of arts, that's also another reason why we, at least as staff, prefer to have an outside operator doing this, because if you find yourselves as an elected body deciding between what show you should run, what's art and what's not, what's appropriate art and what's not, you could get yourself tangled very quickly. And so a company like this helps us kind of insulate us from, as a government, trying to decide what art is and what art is not.
Ms. Waldman?
Yes, Mayor, thank you. I've been following this for many years. As many of you know, I was the liaison for the Seminole Theater for 5 years, and I'm very excited to have you on board. I just wanted to reiterate what Mr. Burgess had said, and the mayor, vice mayor, and Mr. Burgess's motion. I think we're jumping ahead a little bit, because right now it's just a matter of putting a management team in place. Your comments are very interesting and very important for everyone to hear. But right now, the management team is the important part of the equation, and from there we go. Because, as you said, the budget issue, there's going to be a lot of different issues that are going to be coming up. And I think as you sit around that table as a management team, which I've done research on your company, and I know you're brilliant. So if it can be done, I know that you're the people to do it. So with that being said, with all due respect, Mayor, I think if it's the will of the council that we should go on and vote on the motion that's put on the table, and know that I think it was very generous of you right off the bat to say that you encourage the arts community to be involved. But right now we need to set forth that management team, and working with the city manager, who happens to have a lot of experience with local community theaters. So I think with that being said, I'm ready to go.
Mr. Maldonado?
Thank you. And Mr. Manager, thank you for what you just said. That was my concern. The concern is that I don't want to get pulled in, and I know this community, and the reason why they're here speaking is they don't want us to drop this ball. We've brought it so far, we're getting it built, we've worked hard on it, and we're going to want to continue to see the success of what we've built. And so having a proper management team is going to allow them to do the job and bring us what we've asked for. So I'm ready to vote on this, since again it's our concern. I think we all understand it and know it, and that's why we're looking forward to work with. I'm on board with this organization as well. So thank you.
Okay, and we'll close the public hearing this time. We will not lose control of the community theater. We're all going to still be at the table asking the management group for whatever we need to do. Roll call, Madam Clerk.
Councilman Maldonado?
Yes.
Councilman Williams? Councilman Burgess?
Yes.
Councilwoman Waldman?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Shelley?
Yes.
Mayor Porter?
Yes.
The motion carries.
Is there a motion to adjourn? Is there a second? All in favor? Motion carries. We'll take about a 5-minute recess and come back for the committee of the whole.